What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Normally on this channel I talk about RPGs, but there was a time where I didn't play a lot of RPGs, but I was still looking to scratch that itch. A friend of mine introduced me to a game called Too Many Bones, and scratch that itch it did. It gave me quests, it gave me character advancement, and it wrapped the campaign up into a single session in one night. So many years later, I find out that Chip Theory Games, the creators of Too Many Bones, were creating a game based upon the Elder Scrolls, which enhanced that RPG feel all in a board game box. So I signed up for the crowdfunding, and it finally delivered 2 years later. But the question is, does it improve upon what they already had? We're going to find out. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support the channel financially, hit the Super Thanks button. All donations being appreciated.
We're not worthy!
Lastly, if you want to check out the Discord, you'll find discussions, free content, previews of upcoming topics, and even play-by-post games. Not to mention the best group of gamers this side of Cyrodiil. Link in the description. What is Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era? Well, besides being a mouthful as a title, it's a game set in the world of Bethesda's best-selling video game. Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era takes a crack at unlocking the IP by innovating upon the proven game mechanics of the now venerable, by gaming terms anyway, Too Many Bones. For those not familiar with that game, it uses neoprene matte character sheets to build out heroes, with dice being the equivalent of skills or feats in most modern RPGs. They also store all enemy stats on the front of a poker chip and use unmarked chips as health tokens, placed conveniently under the enemy or hero chip. Where cards are used for quests and items, for example, the cards are PVC, as are the reference sheets. Between the neoprene player mats, battle mat, and optional overland map, plus the PVC cards and reference sheets, the game is billed as being playable underwater. It's all over-the-top production, and hard to appreciate until you interact with the actual product. Well, all of that remains true for Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era. But where in Too Many Bones, players would often get to use their best dice one time in a single battle, Elder Scrolls has added a fantastic cooldown track, bringing them back again and again. Furthermore, with the added fatigue mechanic, you can press your luck, mortgaging your future to get an extra bite at the apple. This alone would be a huge innovation, but they didn't stop there. Chip Theory also added unique overland maps, each representing a familiar region of Tamriel, and providing a plethora of unique quests and towns, each with their own flavor. With 5 regions, each with its own gazetteer book in the main box, plus an expansion covering Valenwood, there is a lot of material here. You have, in addition to the aforementioned Valenwood, Blackmarsh, Cyrodiil, High Rock, Morrowind, and Skyrim.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Each guild, 9 in total, has unique first session and second session quests, along with the generous stack of side quests. Now seems like a good time to mention to you. You remember that nice one session experience that was Too Many Bones?
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that isn't this. Here, you will have 3 sessions, each as long as a single Too Many Bones session. Don't buy this if you want a quick play. What makes this less of a grind is the completely customizable characters. Between race, class, skills, and guild, you can build a huge variety of viable options, each more viable in parties of 3 or 4 I've found. Another improvement as compared to Too Many Bones, whereas that game had a static, single 4x4 grid battle mat, this has a variety of changeable battle locations covering clashes, delves, and dungeons. I won't go into too much detail on the differences here other than to say movement and range plays a much larger role in Elder Scrolls. Another enhancement? The enemy pool, which in Too Many Bones consisted of 1, 5, and 20-point varieties, now adds 10-point enemies. And cleverly, Chip Theory doubled your enemy count for the money by placing 5-point enemies on the back of 1-point enemies and 20-point enemies on the back of 10-point enemies. This really speeds up setup and makes the game flow much smoother.
That's a really good idea.
These enemies cover all your favorites from the video games and even have some region-specific options. All in all, these choices make building the enemy bag very quick and easy. As you make your journey through Elder Scrolls, you are going to find yourself enjoying solid mechanics, story, and implementation of the IP that brought so many to the game to begin with. If you give this game your attention, your time invested will pay dividends in your enjoyment. How it plays. This is just a very quick rundown of how the system plays, to give an idea of how everything works. This is your character mat, and each of these smaller discs represents a core stat or skill. Core stats are determined by race of choice, and then augmented by spending XP as you play, with cost of advances listed on the mat, either the white or the black line, depending upon which direction the stat or skill originates from. These are completely customizable, and you should remember choosing to place them across from one another limits advancement potential of both to some degree. There are only so many spots after all. You'll also have access to a class card which shows you how you may spend your tenacity, a resource built from your misses, with each class boasting several flavorful and powerful options. The race, besides giving starting stats, also provides a special ability as well. Skill cards provide visual aids and verbal explanations of what each die of that skill line can do. Each character will have some number of these white combat dice, which can be used in the different melee combat stances, as well as range stance to deal damage, with 1 miss, 1 2 damage result, and 4 1 damage results on each die. Or, if you choose a defense stance, you can proactively roll these combat dice to prevent future damage from opponents. This all sounds more complicated than it is in practice. Basically, your stance determines whether stamina or magic regulates how many dice you may roll per engage. All but magic use stamina as the correct resource. So if you have a 3 stamina, you have a 3 range on your ranged attacks and can roll up to 3 dice per melee defense or ranged engage. Stamina also always limits your movement, so with 3 stamina, you may move 3 hexes once per round. Generally. When using Magic Stance, the Magicka stat determines range in hexes and number of dice you can roll per engage. Interestingly, you can choose to place a light fatigue in your cooldown to take an extra engage, if you want to throw everything at them. But these fatigue dice will fill your cooldown track and prevent you from recovering actual dice at the beginning of your next turn, as they count as a die to recover. It's a bit like having dead cards in your deck if you were playing a deck builder. When everything is singing, you really feel a great amount of control, which is rare in a game where you throw this many dice. Now, the good and the bad. First, the good. Number 1, premium components. As with every other chip theory game, you will immediately appreciate the craftsmanship. If you've never played anything by Chip Theory, you probably won't understand why a game without a single miniature can run me $400. Well, once you play it, you'll understand. Weighted poker chips with beautiful art and clear text, iconography, heat-transferred custom dice galore, neoprene mats for days, PVC cards, maps, and reference sheets, and spiral-bound books for every region. This is already a premium experience. But then they add the option to add another region, weighted health chips, and metal components to further trick out your game. The one major miss for me in this category is the deluxe inventory folders, as they didn't end up saving me any space or time and required a lot of flipping to use. Overall, what I've come to expect from their other products, this is an excellent example of what a premium game should look like. Number 2, character variety. As a longtime Too Many Bones player, I was very skeptical that they could make that system workable in a customizable format. There are so many moving parts it just seemed a very tall order. I'm pleased to say that they've hit the mark, but with a caveat. In my last game, I was running 3 characters, a Dark Elf Sorcerer focusing on the Destruction Staff and Daedric Summoning, before dabbling in illusion magic, a Wood Elf Archer,
You suck!
focusing on his bow while adding a dash of legerdemain and stealth, and a high elf healer that has focused on speechcraft before dabbling in the restoration line. These characters each added much to the party, covering each other's blind spots and creating a well-rounded group. With 3 characters, I had room to play with the less popular skill lines like speechcraft, which, as a note, can be awesome, filling the tenacity track every encounter. That was not the case when I tried True Solo. For all the complaints about the lack of difficulty, I can't agree, at least as it pertains to True Solo, which can be quite brutal and will require a meticulously planned build to find success, at least in my experience. That said, playing multiple characters is easy enough, and even with 3, I seldom feel that it is too much to keep track of. For me, character variety is an absolute home run. 3. IP implementation. The folks at Chip Theory did a great job making this feel like a Bethesda video game experience. From the familiar locales and enemies to the tone of the encounter narratives, everything feels very much like it would fit into a AAA Bethesda title. Some skill lines that map well into the video game I never believed would work at the tabletop, but they do. I find myself fully reading the narrative bits from encounters and quests, something I rarely did in Too Many Bones. Perhaps the best example of this is in the tutorial, which finds your undefined hero awakened in a prison cell. And as you fight your way out, your choices help determine your race, class, and skill line, just like the video games. These types of design choices demonstrate that deep appreciation of the source material that Chip Theory holds, and it transfers wonderfully to the tabletop. Now the bad. Number 1, the cost. There is no way to get around it. This, even at its core price, with none of those upgrades I mentioned, is an expensive game. All of that bling and IP love have a cost associated with it, but the question is, in a world where Gloomhaven exists in a similar space and is substantially cheaper, not to mention it has excellent little brothers, Jaws of the Lion or Bugs and Buttons, the opportunity cost for spending this much on a single game experience is a major factor. And if playing with a group, the possibility of it becoming hard to table due to taste or time could make the price tag all the more difficult to bear. For me, yes, it was worth the price of admission, but the arguments against purchase still seem very reasonable and valid. Do your research before buying this. Number 2, it's a hard teach. Chip Theory Games has lovingly been known for their often eccentric style of game design, but they have been often fairly criticized for dense and not always well-explained rules. I learned pretty much all Chip Theory games from combining learn-to-play videos with frequent rereading of the rules. It is a huge time sink, and because of the bloat of keywords and iconography involved, it is highly likely to run into a rarely seen situation that slows down or completely halts a session while it is figured out. Moreover, because of complex interactions between rules, it is extremely likely your table will get some of these rules wrong, which is fine, but can also drastically change the difficulty one way or the other. And again, all of this is okay if you are invested in learning the game upwards of 20 to 30 hours before my first play in my own case. But what if you want to show someone else your shiny new game? Well, with the steep learning curve and the 8+ hour campaign, it takes the right group to appreciate this game. I'm in that category, but most of my gamer-centric friends are not. Again, do your research before purchase. Number 3, crowdfunding. This is very much a reflection of my own opinion and my own experiences with Chip Theory, and if you disagree, perfectly acceptable to me. That said, you probably won't be changing my opinions on this. I pre-ordered the first reprint of the original Hoplo line, Undertow and Extras, Cloudspire and Extras, Triplock and Extras, Hoplomachus Victorum and Remastered, and crowdfunded 20 Strong and Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era. I know for the last 3, and I'm pretty sure for the priors as well, Chip Theory missed target dates by several months after often indicating hopefulness that dates would be hit little more than a month prior to said date. If this happened once or twice, sure, benefit of the doubt and all. But when it happens consistently and always in one direction, it can only be lack of understanding of the process, which I don't believe to be true, or overpromising and underdelivering as pre-orders increase when closer to the expected ship date. This is common in crowdfunding, but in this case it hits a little different as there is really just early access as a benefit to the crowdfunding. No exclusives, no deep discounts. Miniature Market has the core game for the original $195 price from the campaign with free shipping, and it is not only available by crowdfunding. In this case, I paid roughly $400 almost 2 years ago, and there were some retailers selling before I got my copy. Again, my only advantage for the 0% $400 loan I made them 2 years ago was the early access, which I didn't even get. That being the case, for future chip theory releases, I will either stick to retail or avoid altogether. There just isn't any advantage to the backer. Some will say, but the game wouldn't exist without crowdfunding. Maybe, maybe not. I work in finance, so I'm skeptical this is the only option. More likely, this is the cheapest option because backers are willing to provide interest-free funding for multiple years with no benefits for doing so. So, while I back several projects a year, I won't back future chip theory projects. But if you do, I have nothing against that choice. It's just not for me. Summary. Does Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era translate the video game experience to the table? Does it innovate and improve upon the proven Too Many Bones formula enough to replace it? For me, the answer to both of these is a resounding yes. That said, this is a niche product, and I would go so far as saying that it won't be for most groups. I really feel for Elder Scrolls fans that bought this as their first lifestyle board game, expecting an easy learn and a quick experience, as this is far from that. Even with more than 50 plays of Too Many Bones, this was a slog to learn. But for me at least, it was worth the effort as the Chip Theory folks managed to capture the magic of the IP and to improve upon the mechanics of the great Too Many Bones. Those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours. Have you played Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era? Did it meet your expectations? Did my video sway you one way or another if you haven't made a purchase yet? Tell me about it in the comments. And until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.